Have you ever sat down for breakfast only to wonder when it stopped feeling like breakfast at all? There was a time when morning meals felt simple. Warm plates, slow coffee, and food that filled more than just your stomach. But somewhere along the way, did we trade comfort for convenience without even noticing? Today, at the Hidden Menu, we take a deep dive into which breakfast chains are worth your morning and which ones quietly aren't. So let us start with 1. IHOP Avoid. IHOP used to feel like a breakfast reward. Pancakes with whipped butter, syrup on the table, bottomless coffee, and that soft hum of conversations in booths lined with sunlight. It was the kind of place you go with your grandparents after church or with friends after a long night out. But the IHOP people walk into today isn't the same place it used to be. Not in the food, not in the feeling, and not in the care behind either. The first signs are subtle. Pancakes that cool too quickly, sausage links that taste like they were microwaved, coffee that burns your tongue but somehow still feels weak. Former employees say much of the food now comes frozen or pre-prepped, with fewer items actually made in-house. The pancake batter, once mixed fresh daily with real buttermilk, now often arrives pre-portioned in bags, stored cold and poured without a second thought. It's consistent, but not in a way that makes it better, just predictable, flat. The texture has changed too. Pancakes used to have weight, that slight crackle on the edge from a real hot griddle. Now they're soft and spongy, sometimes pale in the center, like they were cooked just long enough to pass inspection, but not long enough to carry flavor. One former line cook said the emphasis was always on speed. Keep the place moving, don't worry if the inside's a little underdone. The toppings cover it anyway. And that's become the model. Toppings overtake the food itself. Syrups, whipped cream, candy sprinkles, fruit sauces. They give the illusion of variety, but they also serve a quieter purpose, covering what's underneath. If the base isn't good, drown it in sweetness and move on. That's not nostalgia talking, it's a strategy. You're eating the experience, not the meal. IHOP's still friendly, the booths are still warm, the signage still says international, but the food that used to feel like a treat has been managed into something forgettable. It fills the plate, it checks the box, but it doesn't land in your memory. And when breakfast stops feeling like something to savor and starts feeling like a transaction, you know something got lost along the way.
2. Denny's Avoid.
Denny's used to be the last place open, and sometimes that made it the best. Whether it was midnight coffee or a 6 a.m. breakfast before hitting the road, Denny's served something warm when everywhere else had closed up. But what felt like a late-night refuge has become, in many places, just another stop in a system that no longer remembers how to slow down. The menu is massive, but the care behind it isn't. Pancakes, eggs, sausage, bacon, it all looks right on the plate, but bite into it and you feel the shortcut. One longtime customer said it best. It's like they're imitating breakfast now, not making it. Former kitchen staff agree. Much of the food now arrives frozen or vacuum sealed, designed to be unwrapped, reheated, and served. Even the eggs, once cracked fresh for every order, are sometimes poured from cartons depending on location. And the flavor shows it. Hash browns come out undercooked in the center, yet burned on the edges. Bacon tastes more like salt than smoke. Pancakes go cold faster than they should. The coffee, endlessly refillable, somehow tastes thinner with every cup. One server admitted they were told to stretch old pots during slow shifts. Just keep it hot, not necessarily fresh. The biggest issue isn't the ingredients. It's the atmosphere of indifference. Denny's used to feel like a place where something was still happening, no matter the time. But now the food feels like it's going through the motions. It arrives fast, looks clean enough, and gives you just enough to not complain. But it doesn't bring you back. It doesn't leave an impression. Denny's wants to be everything. Family spot, hangout, late-night fix. But the heart of breakfast is simplicity done right. And when that's missing, all the options in the world don't make up for what's been hollowed out.
3. Panera Bread Avoid.
Panera Bread built its reputation on warmth, real bread, good coffee, soft lighting, and that subtle feeling that you were doing something healthy just by being there. And for a while, that was true. Oatmeal with fruit that felt fresh, eggs cooked with care, and coffee that didn't taste like it had been reheated 5 times. But lately, the illusion of care has started to thin. The breakfast sandwiches, once advertised as cracked fresh, now often come pre-assembled, wrapped in paper, and dry around the edges before they even hit your table. One former associate said eggs were sometimes cooked in bulk and stored in warming trays during the morning rush, especially on weekends. It's all about timing, they said, not freshness, just keeping up. And the coffee? Once the backbone of the morning menu, it's become inconsistent at best. Weak, overly bitter, or brewed hours earlier and left to sit in carafes that don't hold heat. The refill system, part of their unlimited sip club, means people keep pouring. but not because it tastes good, just because it's there. Even the pastries feel different now. Muffins that used to crumble now break like cake mix. Bagels that were once chewy come out dry and pale. A lot of it is delivered pre-made, then finished in store. It looks nice in the case, but the bite tells the truth. This wasn't made for you. It was made for speed, scale, and shelf life. Panera still talks about clean food, and maybe technically it is. But clean doesn't always mean fresh. It doesn't always mean cared for. And when the food that used to feel personal starts to feel processed, you stop tasting it the same way. The meal fills you, but it doesn't stay with you, not in your body, not in your memory.
4. Cracker Barrel. Avoid. Cracker Barrel still looks the part. Wooden rocking chairs out front, country store inside. Peg games on the table while you wait. For years, it offered a kind of breakfast that felt rooted in something older, something slower. Cast iron, butter, and the smell of grits rising off a hot plate. But lately, that feeling doesn't always make it past the front porch. The food still looks the same. Pancakes stacked tall, biscuits golden, eggs nestled between sides that seem hand-scooped. But when you take a bite, it starts to feel like someone's cooking from memory, not muscle. The pancakes are too soft. The hash browns come out underdone, and the bacon, once crisp and curling at the edges, is often limp and lukewarm. Former employees say a lot of the prep has shifted behind the scenes. Mixes now arrive pre-portioned. Ingredients are standardized across regions. Gravy comes in bags, reheated and poured instead of stirred on a stove. It's not about cooking anymore, one line cook said. It's about keeping things moving. That speed may help with consistency, but it also strips out the human touch that once made the meal feel homemade. Even the biscuits, once a point of pride, feel different now. They're still big, still flaky, but the flavor is faint, like flour, salt, and not much else. And if they sit under a heat lamp for more than a few minutes, the softness disappears and the middle turns dense. Cracker Barrel breakfasts used to stretch time in the best way. You lingered, you poured syrup slowly, you didn't rush. But now the meal moves quicker, even if the food takes longer to arrive. The experience feels compressed, designed, just enough to remind you of how it used to be, but not enough to bring it all the way back. The setting's still charming, the checkers board is still missing a piece, the music still loops quietly from speakers in the rafters. But when the food on the plate loses its soul, the rest becomes set dressing. You're not eating in a memory anymore. You're eating in a replica of one. If you've ever left breakfast feeling full but not quite right, leave a like, share your story in the comments, and subscribe to the hidden menu, because the smallest meals can say the most. 5. Einstein Bros. Avoid. Einstein Bros. Bagels isn't a diner, and it never claimed to be. But for a lot of people, it's a weekday breakfast spot, fast, semi-fresh, and warm enough to get you through the commute. You walk in for a bacon, egg, and cheese on Asiago, maybe a vanilla hazelnut coffee. It feels like a reasonable start to the day. But even the most reasonable breakfasts can go quietly wrong. The bagels used to have bite, a little chew, a real crust that told you they were boiled before they were baked. But that process takes time, and time doesn't scale well. Former bakers have said that many locations now receive bagels par-baked, frozen, and just finished on site. They smell fresh when they come out of the oven, but they don't taste like anything made from scratch. It's more steam than crust, more softness than structure. And the egg? It used to be cracked in the store, messy, uneven, but real. Now it's pre-cooked, cut into a perfect circle, and layered with cheese that doesn't quite melt. One former employee said they'd microwave the egg pucks in batches and keep them warm until assembly. It's fast, it's efficient, but it's not food made with hands. It's food passed through steps. The coffee isn't much better. The carafes sit too long. The flavored blends lean heavily on syrups that cover stale brew. You add sweetener, maybe cream, and hope it tastes close to what you remember. But if you drink it black, you'll notice the thinness, the bitterness, the lack of body that used to come from a fresh pot poured at the right time. Einstein Brothers still brands itself around warmth, baked goods, cozy spaces, the idea
of comfort food on the go. But the comfort now comes from the routine, not the taste. You eat it because it's there, because it's fast, because it's what you always order. But at some point, you stop noticing the difference between something baked for you and something baked for everyone.
6. Subway, avoid. Subway might not be a breakfast place in the traditional sense, but they serve breakfast, and a lot of people grab it. Egg white flatbreads, toasted sandwiches, coffee poured from behind the sandwich counter. It's fast, cheap, and technically warm. But technically is doing most of the work. The eggs aren't cracked. They're frozen slabs, yellow squares of pre-cooked protein reheated in the same toaster that melts cheese. One former manager said the egg patties come stacked in plastic and are pulled from a cooler in batches. They're designed to look uniform, taste neutral, and heat fast. It's not really an egg, they said. It's a protein shape. The bread, which used to have a faint crisp when toasted, now often comes out limp and gummy. That's because it's steamed during toasting, trapped in the same small space as melting cheese and frozen meats. It's warm, sure, but it's not toasted in the way you'd expect, and that softness makes everything taste a little more like a reheated sandwich and a little less like breakfast. Even the bacon is flat and flavorless. It arrives pre-cooked. It curls slightly, but doesn't sizzle. And once it cools, it hardens into something closer to a meat chip than a slice of bacon. The coffee, when it's offered, is often a side note. One machine, one button, a cup that tastes like it was brewed last week. And while few people come to Subway for the coffee, the fact that it's so forgettable still tells you something about how breakfast is handled overall. Subway breakfasts aren't made. They're assembled, designed for speed and volume, not for satisfaction. Not for mornings where you want something that feels real. And that's the problem. It's not that the food is inedible. It's that it feels like it was never meant to matter. 7. Tim Hortons, avoid. Tim Hortons carries a certain kind of nostalgia, even in the US. For some, it's tied to memories of road trips or those early mornings in colder places, a hot coffee in one hand and a breakfast sandwich in the other. It was always simple, basic, but comforting. But lately, in more and more locations, that comfort has started to feel manufactured. The food comes quick, the names haven't changed, but the taste just doesn't land the same. The breakfast sandwiches used to have that slightly imperfect homemade feel. Real egg, flaky biscuit, cheese that melted over the edge. Now the biscuit feels dry before you even take a bite. The egg? More like a thin yellow pad than anything freshly cracked. One former employee said the eggs are pre-cooked, frozen, and often microwaved in batches to speed things up. If it looked warm, we served it, they said. Didn't matter how it tasted. And it shows. The sandwich might look right in the wrapper, but the texture is off. Rubbery egg, bread that dries out fast, and bacon that feels like it sat under a heat lamp for too long. Add in the cheese and you get something that's hot but somehow flavorless. The kind of meal that fills you up without giving you anything to remember. The coffee used to be a saving grace. It was never complex, but it was consistent. Hot, smooth, with a roast that didn't try too hard. But that too has slipped. Customers report weaker brews, burnt aftertastes, or flavors that seem overly sweet, even when you don't add sugar. Former workers say some stores stretch brewed coffee longer than they should, especially during slower hours. And in a chain that promises familiarity, inconsistency can feel like betrayal. Even the donuts, once part of the brand's quiet charm, have lost their edge. They're shipped frozen and finished in store, but rarely with the care they used to have. The glaze is thin, the inside dry. You eat it because it's there, not because it's good. Tim Hortons still talks like it's offering you a warm, dependable morning. But what lands on the table feels like the shadow of what it used to be. Nothing's broken outright. Nothing's offensive. But when a breakfast chain starts to taste like it's given up on being remembered, that's when you start to wonder what else quietly changed.
8. First Watch, worth it. First Watch doesn't always come up in the big breakfast chain conversation, but maybe it should. There's no late-night diner energy, no massive combo plates or neon syrup dispensers. What you get instead is something quieter. Coffee brewed fresh, ingredients that taste like they were chopped this morning, and plates that remind you breakfast can still be worth slowing down for. And in a space full of shortcuts, that choice to do it right stands out. The eggs taste like eggs, fluffy, warm, with enough salt to matter and not so much it distracts. The potatoes have that crisp edge, uneven in the best way, like someone actually flipped them on a griddle instead of running them through a fryer. One customer said it best. Nothing on the plate is trying to impress you. It just tastes how you hoped it would. Even the pancakes hold up. Thick, golden, not overly sweet. You can taste the batter. Vanilla, buttermilk, maybe a little cinnamon depending on what you order. They aren't buried under toppings or lost under syrup. You actually want to eat them plain for a few bites, just to enjoy what the kitchen did before the syrup ever touched the plate. And the menu doesn't feel like it's been copy-pasted from somewhere else. Avocado toast that actually has texture. Seasonal items that change. Bowls with roasted veggies and real herbs, not just filler words on a laminated card. Former employees say the kitchens are trained to prioritize freshness. And it shows. Most prep happens on-site, eggs are cracked per order, the toast is actually toasted. Even the coffee works. It's strong, dark, but never burned. And if you sit long enough, they keep pouring without rushing you out. That might be the biggest difference of all. In most chains, you feel the clock ticking. At First Watch, the meal moves at your pace. It's not cheap and it's not fast. But that's kind of the point. In a world of rushed breakfasts and food that feels forgettable, First Watch gives you the opposite. A pause, a plate that feels like it was made for someone. Maybe even you.
9. The original Pancake House. Worth it. The original Pancake House isn't flashy. It doesn't market itself with limited-time flavors or flashy promos. You walk in, the air smells like butter and batter, and you know exactly what you came for. And somehow, it still delivers. The pancakes are what you remember. Thick at the center, crisp around the edge, and warm all the way through. They don't just look good, they feel good. There's real weight to them, both on the fork and in your mouth. And more importantly, they taste like someone actually made them. Not someone who reheated them, someone who whisked something in a bowl that morning. It's not just pancakes either. The bacon is thick, cooked to order. The eggs aren't fluffed into shape or poured from a carton. They're cracked, scrambled, and seasoned by hand. Even the whipped cream tastes like it was made in the back, not pulled from a can. One customer said they drove 30 minutes just to sit and eat something that felt undisturbed by marketing. That's what this place does best. Serve food that doesn't try to trick you. The Dutch Baby is another quiet gem. Baked to order, puffy and golden, dusted with sugar and lemon. It takes time, and they tell you that. And when it shows up, it's not perfect. It's real. And you remember it. Even the coffee is better than expected. It's not the star, but it plays its part. Strong enough to cut through syrup, soft enough to sip slowly. They pour it in thick ceramic mugs, the kind that keep the heat, the kind you don't throw away. The service moves slower here, but that's never felt like a problem. You're not here to rush. You're here because you miss the kind of breakfast that stays with you, the kind where the food doesn't need a gimmick, the kind where you walk out full, not just in your stomach, but in your memory. The original Pancake House doesn't pretend to be something it's not, and maybe that's why it still matters. Because breakfast done right doesn't need to shout, it just needs to show up warm. If any of these breakfasts brought back a memory or made you question one, leave a like, share your story in the comments, and subscribe to the hidden menu so you never have to eat in the dark again.
And remember, the truth is not always on the menu.